This is kinda long, so please, bear with me. Back in my early 20s, I moved to Melbourne to go to university. Because of some of my dodgy friends I knew from outside of my university, I somehow wound up as the guy to go to for drugs with my classmates. I hated the reputation, but maybe felt a little bit cool at the same time. Ecstasy and speed mostly. I was at the bottom of the drug dealer food chain, and the type of idiot who jacks the price up $10 a pill, mainly so I could have enough money to drink and party. I had no guilt ripping these people off. These were mostly rich kids who lived with their parents and didn't have to work to support themselves through university. Dealing them drugs was so easy and non-threatening. A few years after I finished at university, I was working an office job that was boring and paid peanuts. By now, my friends and I had pretty much grown out of the desire to take drugs on weekends. My drug dealing days had well and truly finished. It was 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night. I just got home from a draining day at work and was exhausted, and in a bad mood. I plonked myself on the couch and stared at the ceiling, trying to muster up the courage to get up and shower before bed. My phone starts flashing and vibrating on the coffee table next to me. I looked at the caller ID, and it was T-Bone, the nickname I had for a guy I met at a festival years ago and ended up spending a bit of time with here and there. He was a huge, friendly weed-smoking, acid-tripping hipster with an impressive beard. I hadn't spoken to this guy in well over a year, so when I saw his caller ID on my phone, I immediately thought, he probably needs drugs. I answered, and we exchanged some pleasantries, and then I could hear the tone in his voice change to that awkward, "Hey, could I ask you a favor?" kind of tone. He wanted drugs, and a lot of them. $2,000 worth to be precise. When I asked him what specifically he wanted, he just said, "As many ecstasy and bags of speed that I can get." He laughed. This was way outside of my comfort zone. Even when I was dealing back in uni, 10 pills was usually the maximum I would offload to anyone at any time. It was late, I was tired, and figured that I can clear an easy $500 after purchasing from one of my guys I used to buy from. I told T-Bone that I would call him back and see what I could do. To my surprise, the first person I called was Stover, and he was able to help me out, and he was only a 5-minute drive from me. We discussed the terms and conditions, which seemed reasonable. 60 ecstasy and 3 grams of speed for $1,500. I called T-Bone, and he was happy to part with the $2,000 for this amount. I met Stover out front of his luxurious apartment building. We had a quick chat and he joked about wanting to meet the guy I'm selling to. We shook hands and I was on my way to T-Bone. I asked T-Bone where he wanted to meet, and he told me where he was. I Google mapped the address. It was a 45-minute drive from me. Had I known he was this far away, I wouldn't have agreed to sell him anything, but I couldn't back out now. The address he gave me was in what was probably one of the worst neighborhoods in Australia, known for its violent crimes, murders, and of course, drug dealing. For anyone reading this living outside of Australia, they certainly don't show this in tourist brochures. I also won't mention the name of the place, because I don't want to offend anyone reading this that might live there. I started the journey. I now had plenty of time to think about how stupid I am. I had a ridiculously illegal amount of drugs on me, and I was driving out to the roughest neighborhood in the country. After ages of sitting on the freeway, I took the exit and was approaching my destination. At this point, I was so tired that I was in an almost dreamlike state. Every set of lights I pulled up to, people in cars next to me would give me greasy looks, trying to act hard and start a confrontation. I pulled into the street where the house was. "Your destination is on the left," my phone told me. The street was so dark because the street lights were out, and there was cloud cover, so no moon. The houses on this street looked dilapidated and abandoned. This didn't feel right. The house T-Bone said he was at had boarded up front windows and graffiti tags on them, and there weren't any lights on. I called T-Bone. No answer. I redialed and thought it was about to ring out when he picked up. "Hey T-Bone, I'm out front." "Okay, cool. Come in," he said. "No, you come out to the car," I replied. "Hang on a sec," he said and hung up. I was thinking, I hardly know this guy. He had been at a few parties I went to. We hung out, but I don't know anything about him. I saw him emerge from the side of the house, pushing through bushes that blocked the pathway. It was the only car parked on the street. He saw me and gestured for me to come over. I had no idea who he was with. So I thought it was time to get into character. I took my jacket off so I was only wearing a white singlet, and put my filthy black trucker cap on that I kept in the glove box. I was hoping this would help me look a bit more intimidating. My friends often joked how I look tougher than I am. I have some football and kickboxing-induced facial scars, combined with a pretty large physique from smashing weights for years. I was big enough and scary looking enough to be intimidating. But truth be known, I'm really a marshmallow who avoids confrontations. I shook hands with T-Bone in the front yard of his place. I felt at ease when he gave me a happy greeting and thanked me for coming out this way. He told me to follow him, and we went through the bushes around to the back of his place. I could hear music. Sounds like they were bumping dubstep through distorting speakers. I could hear a few people's voices. And I could smell cigarette smoke. T-Bone ripped the back door open, and the smell and sound hit me harder. I've been to some nasty house parties, but this was horrific. There were 3 of them in the kitchen. There was a flashlight attached by string to the 12-foot ceiling, swinging back and forth slowly, like a pendulum. This was the only lighting. The swinging light made it difficult to see the people in the kitchen, but with each sway, I would catch a glimpse of their faces. They were absolute toothless junkies, all shirtless and skinny, with bad tattoos. We entered the kitchen, and one of them closed the door behind us and stood in front of it, arms folded as if he was guarding it. One of them came forward and told me his name was Jay. Not like he was introducing himself. It was more of a statement. His face was full-blown meth. He sized me up and looked at T-Bone and said, "I thought you said this guy was a punk." T-Bone looked at him in total shock. As Jay turned to T-Bone, the flashlight swung past, and I noticed he was holding a big screwdriver behind his back. Now I realized what was happening, and I felt like an idiot. I've walked into an ambush. Get a guy with a ton of drugs and come around and rob him. Jay turned back to me. He was about 6 feet away from me. He showed me the screwdriver and said, "What do you got for me?" With a big toothless smile. The fact I was so tired and pissed off kind of worked for me. because I didn't show I was scared. I squared up to him and said, in a nonsense tone, "Give me the cash and I'll show you." To Jay, which replied, "Nah, T-Bone told me that these were on loan." I looked at T-Bone, who looked back at me and shook his head and mouthed, "I'm sorry." Jay looked at me with such hatred. It looked as though he was in pain. "Give us the drugs." If it wasn't so dark in here, he would have easily seen my overinflated pocket, where the drugs were stashed in an envelope. I looked at the guy in front of the door, and as soon as our eyes met, he put his arm over the door handle, confirming that he wasn't going to let me leave. We all stood there trading glances. The swinging light made everyone's shadows look like they were moving. Jay didn't like this. T-Bone broke the silence and said, "Jay, chill out, I'll get the money." And he left the kitchen. I thought he was going to bail on me. Jay slowly came towards me, pointing the screwdriver at me. He said in a raspy, matter-of-fact tone, "I'll kill you. I've done it before. Try me." "That's cute," I replied. Then the painful anger came back into his face. I've never seen anything like it. I slowly put my feet in a fight stance to prepare myself for what was about to happen. T-Bone walked back in and said, "Here's the cash," which briefly diffused the situation. I did a quick count. It was $1,700. Close enough. I threw the envelope of gear to Jay, and the door guard moved and I got out of there. T-Bone followed me and he tried to give me an apology. "Dude, I had no idea this was gonna happen. I'm so sorry." I just said, "You owe me $300, and drove away. I never got the extra $300, and I never dealt drugs again. I also, thankfully, never met Jay again.